Julia poured lukewarm, scented water over her body from a golden cup. She savored the sensation of the water cascading over her under the soft candlelight of the tepidarium. Her figure was enviable, a flat belly, well-formed hips, and smooth limbs, almost hairless. She had learned the secret to this smoothness from a Nubian servant who, as a child, had been taught by the Egyptians, waxing, though painful, had left her skin flawless. Her preoccupation with her body wasn't rooted in vanity, as she was fully aware that her face wasn't perfect. Her nose had a noticeable bump that reminded some of a bird's beak. Her eyes were small and set closely together, and her jawline was angular. She may have come from an esteemed family with lineage dating back to the founding of Rome, but she knew that maintaining her physical appeal was vital to keeping her husband's interest. She couldn't help but compare herself to her companions from the women's bath. Pompeia had uneven breasts and noticeable stretch marks on her belly, while Fabia struggled with an unsightly layer of fat around her waist. Julia caught herself thinking this way and quietly prayed to Jupiter, hoping to avoid punishment for her thoughts. Both women were mothers, and she feared that one day her own body might mirror theirs, especially if she bore children. However, she was determined to fight it. The Nubian slave had advised her to apply almond oil to prevent stretch marks, and Julia planned to control her diet to avoid gaining excess weight. Wanting to shift her focus, Julia listened as her friends discussed a fourth patrician woman who was rumored to be unfaithful to her husband. Despite being from a noble family herself, Julia detested gossip, which she considered a typical Roman pastime. The women's bath, though smaller and less frequented than the men's, offered some privacy. Roman women were often too busy with household chores, pregnancies, and child-rearing to enjoy the luxury of a bath. Women like Julia, Pompeia, and Fabia, wives of influential families, were exceptions, having servants to handle the everyday tasks. To stop the endless gossiping, Julia decided to share something personal. "I had a strange dream 2 nights ago," she said. Her friends paused, curiosity flashing in their eyes, and Fabia spoke first. "Really? Tell us about it, Julia," she said. "In the dream, I was in a vast city, much larger than Rome," Julia explained. "That's hard to believe, Rome is the largest city in the world." Pompeia interjected. "I know," Julia replied, "but in the dream, I just knew this city was bigger than Rome, and at least 2 others were even larger. People lived in towering buildings, some so tall they seemed to reach the sky," she continued. "That reminds me," Pompeia said. "There was an attempt to build a 3-story house near mine once, but it collapsed under its own weight. I think they used steel bars to reinforce the concrete," Julia suggested. "People drove these strange metal chariots that didn't need horses or oxen to pull them," Julia went on. The 2 girls exchanged skeptical looks at this strange idea. "They could make light at night just by pressing something called a button on the wall, and it didn't involve any fire," Julia added. "Maybe you dreamed of the future," Pompeia mused. "Perhaps," Fabia agreed. "With how things are progressing, it sounds like it could be 300 years into the future. Oneiros often sends such visions to mortals." Julia had forgotten that Fabia's mother was Greek, and so she explained, "Oneiros is the Greek name for the god Morpheus." Julia continued, "The strangest part was that nothing in the dream seemed odd to me. It felt completely normal." The conversation shifted to more details of Julia's peculiar dream, including a magical box containing tiny human-like figures who sang, danced, and seemed alive. Though she couldn't recall what the people of the dream called the box, Julia made up a name for it: home theater. By then, no one remembered the woman who was allegedly cheating on her husband. The next time the 3 friends had privacy was after dinner, which Julia had organized for her husband's senator friends and their wives. After the meal, most guests left, but the men stayed in a separate room for another round of heavy drinking. Julia's husband was campaigning for the position of praetor, a key step in the cursus honorum, the traditional progression of Roman political offices. This meant his guests had to be properly entertained. Unlike Pompeia's husband, who would often become violent after drinking, Julia's husband preferred to pass out in their bed, turning to the wall and snoring loudly like a pig through the night. Though she loved her husband and had no desire to betray him, Julia would have preferred to sleep alone in one of the guest rooms. She loved him dearly, and her sense of honor prevented her from even considering infidelity. She also felt confident that her husband wasn't the type to seek prostitutes or young boys in the military camps, at least, that was as certain as a Roman woman could be. But because she belonged to him and his power could be ruthless, she wouldn't dare leave their marital bed that night. It was much safer to endure a sleepless night than risk the consequences of defying him. The next time the three friends had privacy to chat was after the dinner Julia had organized for her husband's senator friends and their wives. While Julia was reflecting on the night ahead, Fabia asked, "Did you have any more strange dreams?" "As a matter of fact, I did," Julia responded. She looked uncomfortable and flushed, before finally admitting, "In the dream, I was a man, not a woman, and my name was Decimus." Her friends exchanged amused glances but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I was married, and my wife's name was Claudia. We had 2 children, a son named Gaius and a daughter named Cornelia. The children's names sound Roman, but the others I don't recognize," Fabia remarked. Pompeia, curious about other details, asked, "And what was it like? Did you know, with your wife?" Julia's face turned a deep shade of red as the memory surfaced. Her friend, clearly interested, pressed on. "And?" "Well," Julia hesitated, "it was different, but good. The sensation of having a male organ was strange, but feeling it grow under the sight of my unclothed wife was intense." Realizing what she was saying, she quickly added, "Don't misunderstand me, I still prefer making love as a woman. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that a woman has 10 times more pleasure than a man, as Tiresias supposedly claimed. It's simply different." Julia decided to change the subject. "In my dream, I was a historian." "Like the ones we have?" asked Fabia. "Not exactly. This historian worked with a strange machine that filled endless sheets of a papyrus-like material called paper with writing," Julia explained. "I was an expert in ancient Roman history, especially the history of the Roman Republic, our time." Before she could continue, a servant arrived, interrupting her, to inform them that their husbands were ready to leave. 3 weeks later, the 3 friends met again at the Vestalia, a festival honoring the goddess Vesta. This was the only time of the year when regular women, not just the Vestals, could offer sacrifices to the goddess for fertility and the protection of families. After the ceremony, they were alone on the stairs outside the temple, and Fabia said, "A little bird told me this year's ceremony has a special meaning for you, Julia." Julia was always amazed at how quickly Roman gossip spread. Just 2 days before, she had realized, "Yes, I'm already 2 months late with my period. My pointers are larger and more sensitive. The physician agrees with me, I'm pregnant," Julia said. "Praise be to the goddess. Have you decided on a name?" Pompeia asked. "If it's a boy, he'll be called Gaius, like his father and grandfather," Julia replied. "And if it's a girl?" Pompeia pressed. "I haven't thought about that yet," Julia said. Changing the subject. "Did you have any more of those strange dreams?" Fabia asked. "I did, a week ago. In the dream, I was visiting Rome with my family, well, Decimus's family. The city was quite different. It had those tall, multi-story buildings I saw in my first dream, and the streets were filled with strange metal chariots, making sounds like screeching birds. We visited the Forum, but it was in ruins. Yet, there were parts and monuments that don't exist today. We also visited other buildings that reminded me of our time, but aren't here anymore. I particularly remember a large stone arena, called the Colosseum, and a huge temple called the Pantheon. There were also temples to unknown gods, and many artworks in styles I didn't recognize. They looked Greek, but different. We ended our visit at a famous square called Trevi, where there was a fountain with beautiful statues. Stunning statues, Julia said. At the bottom of the fountain's pool, there were many coins. I knew it was a common belief that if someone tossed a coin into the fountain, their wish would be granted, she continued. So, Decimus, tossed a coin and whispered, I wish I were someone of importance in the old Roman Republic. At this point, Pompeia, her eyes glistening with laughter, barely holding it back, exclaimed. That's ridiculous. I know, Julia replied, how could I, a simple patrician girl, ever be of any importance to our republic? The worst part is, she hesitated, I think in my mind, Decimus's mind, I wanted to be a general or something he called an emperor. Before she could finish, Pompeia interrupted. Don't speak so loudly. That sounds dangerously close to wanting to be a king, and you know how the Romans feel about kings. I don't plan to tell anyone else, and I hope neither of you will, Julia said firmly. Of course, both girls replied at the same time, their expressions innocent. These dreams must surely be the gods' way of mocking my own insignificance, Julia said with a sigh. She added, thankfully, after that last dream, I haven't had another like it. By then, the three friends were descending the stairs toward their homes. Pompeia and Julia walked ahead, chatting about baby clothes. Fabia trailed behind by about 5 meters, lost in thought, reflecting on the dream Julia had shared. Looking at the temple of Venus in the distance, she murmured aloud. Gaius Julius Caesar, that's a truly good patrician name. As soon as she spoke the name, a chill ran down her spine. She wondered if winter would come earlier that year. Hastily, she caught up with her friends, eager to tell them about a beautiful mini toga she had seen a baby wearing recently. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.